This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Chapter 1. Saint-Lizier, France, September 1943. Sunlight broke through the mist like a spotlight in Hollywood, the crimson globe guiding Grace Tonquin and the 12 children in her care. It was only minutes now before they'd be tucked away in the cathedral of Saint-Lizier, hidden from the light. Red sky in the morning. Grace tried to shake off the sailor's warning as she led the children beside a moss-cloaked wall, the jagged stones along this passage blocking out the embers of dawn. The cobbles were slippery under her Oxfords, her toes blistered, but she couldn't stop now. Americans had been recalled home, but she couldn't leave until all the Jewish children had been hidden or evacuated from France. Élias, the oldest boy, carried a younger child named Louis in one arm, even as he lifted his sister Marguerite over a puddle, the smell of rain drifting across their shadowed path with the autumn leaves. Grace had spent her childhood summers hiding from lights and the crowds that oohed and awed as if she were a celebrity, but the crowds never really saw her. The daughter of Ruby Tonquin, that's who they saw. Not a timid child who wanted to lock herself into a closet at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. A strange girl who preferred exploring the beaches along Santa Monica rather than perusing the shops. The only person in California, it seemed, who didn't worship Ruby. Marguerite turned around, and her eyes swelled like the sun. Grace leaned down, pressing her finger against her lips. The quiet, she'd explained to all the children, was their ally until they reached the cathedral. Silence, their shield. The oldest girl in their group was 15, and she turned a corner ahead of them. All the children followed Suzelle like ducklings in their drab winter coats, small knapsacks weighing down their hands, the padding of espadrilles, woven shoes, against stone. It was much too warm for the heavy coats, but they would need them soon when snow fell in the nearby mountains. Muet comme un carpe, Grace whispered, as mute as a carp. Two of the kids bumped into each other, giggling in spite of her mandate in both French and English for silence. They didn't understand, couldn't possibly understand what was at stake. She couldn't even comprehend it all, but she'd heard rumors of what was happening outside Vichy France, that violence was bleeding over into the few zones still considered free for Jewish children. She had to get these children out of France to a safe place before the Nazis found them. She'd also heard rumors of the Allies gaining ground in the war against Germany, heard reports from Charles de Gaulle, a French general, who had secured himself up in London. But all she saw on the ground were the French police and Nazi officers who seemed to hate anyone Jewish, no matter what age. When the war was finally over, she prayed the children would be safe. But until then, she and her co-workers who remained in France continued to help. Ahead was the cathedral, its medieval bell tower crowning the sky, the stone walls a fortress. A place of great comfort, she thought. A sanctuary like the farmhouse where she and the children had stayed last, sleeping most of the day before resuming their night travels. These children had been walking for 2 nights now, relocating from the orphanage in a village called Aspet. The weariness had crept into their bones, sores pocking their feet, but they couldn't stop. Soon, Roland Mercier had said they would hide together in a chateau until he secured passage for these kids over the Pyrénées mountains into Spain, and then Portugal. The stillness of these morning hours was a blessing, but it was almost too quiet, she thought. No bark of a dog or rattle of the dairyman's wagon. Even the breeze that rustled up the alley felt like a desert wind, as if they were the only ones who dared enter this river town. She shook her head, trying to shake off her premonition. The cathedral was the only safe place in this village to hide her wards.